Alrighty, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Time Out with Doc and Caveman. As always, you are here with Dr. Fantasy and the Fantasy Caveman. We are continuing to roll along with our NBA team previews. Today's episode will focus on the Miami Heat. Before we start rolling, I want to remind everybody to please subscribe on YouTube and wherever you're listening to podcasts. You'll get notified anytime we post any new videos. We're going to be releasing the rest of our NBA team previews leading up to the season. And then we also have some plans to do some individual player breakout videos as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And of course, as we get closer, we'll have standing predictions and we'll keep you up to date throughout the NBA offseason and in season. So please subscribe and make sure you don't miss any of that great content. But today we're going to be talking about the Miami Heat, who are one of my teams typically. I love a Jimmy Butler led team. That's my kind of guy. But last season, 40-32, sixth in the Eastern Conference under Eric Spoelstra, who is the second longest tenured head coach in the NBA now. A few random stats from last season. They were 18th in offensive rating, 17th in defensive rating. Once again, another team very strong defensively, but needs to improve on the offensive side of the ball. A few other random numbers: 11th in three-point percentage allowed, so in the upper half of the league. They scored the eighth fewest points in the paint, which I thought was interesting. They weren't very effective there. Their three-point percentage was 10th worst in the league, seventh worst rebounding team, and then another one that first time I've said the stat, but they had the third highest assist rate in the league. So this is a team that played as a cohesive unit last year.
Now I expect, now that you said that once, I want the assist rate for every other team that we do now.
I'm not going to even tell you who's number one. When I looked it up, I was like, I don't want to even talk. It was the Hornets, but they're
And
number one. But
I wonder why.
I can't figure out why. But I mean, once again, it's that Pop system. It came from Pop, James
Yeah.
Borrego. But still, let's go over their point leaders. That's where I am. I lost my spot for a
I
second.
sense I also have their leaders, and I don't know, but I see two names.
Basically, Jimmy Butler, 21.5 points. Bam at 18.7. Tyler Hero at 15.1. Kendrick Nunn at 14.6 points. Rebounds, Bam, 9. Jimmy Butler, 6.9. Kelly Olynyk, 6.1. Assists, Jimmy Butler, 7.1. Bam,
Russell
5.4.
Westbrook vibes.
God, this is ridiculous. Goran Dragic at 4.4. Jimmy Butler led the way with steals, 2.1. I wonder who was second. Bam at 1.2. And then blocks, Bam also led the way. So, okay, man, who stood out to you this season,
I
or
mean,
last season, I should
besides
say?
Jimmy Butler and Bam, I
Yeah,
mean,
besides them.
obviously, the reality is those guys. Me, Bam's good. I clown a bit with that, but the reality is Bam, to me, took a big step forward. He averaged over a block and a steal a game. I think that's very impressive, especially for a big man. He averaged more steals than he did blocks. I think that's something you don't see a lot from the big men. I think he showed a lot of defensive versatility, being able to switch on to a lot of guards. He has some really good speed. Uh, but yeah, Bam's a guy that kind of, because I look at the rest of this team, and we can talk about. I'm sure. I know Tyler Harrow kind of not shockingly regressed a little bit. I'm sorry, but it's true. He took a step back. Uh, Duncan Robinson. This is crazy to think a guy that shot 40% from three regressed, but he shot the previous season. He shot almost 43. And for Duncan Robinson, he's a pretty one-dimensional guy. I'm sorry, but he shoots threes and that's all he does. So if that's your contribution to the team, you can't regress. So you need to he needs to get back to that 42, 43%. But yeah, reality is Bam was impressive. Jimmy Butler was Jimmy Butler, I don't think I think he was kind of status quo for me, basically. But those are kind of, I mean, that was kind of their team. So, what do you, seriously, who impressed you? Certainly not Tyler Hero.
Oh, we're gonna talk about Tyler Hero. Don't you worry, because you need to stop hating on him. But he, yeah, Bam. We talked about this a few times with other players in previous episodes, but I think it's always impressive when somebody is more efficient with more volume. So he took 1.5 more shots a game, but a shot higher from the field as a whole. His free throw percentage went up 10% as well. Points per game went up a few, but overall he was more efficient with more opportunities. And anytime you see that, I think that's a really encouraging sign. The only other thing that I think I'll really note, because besides that, I mean, they lost quite a bit. Two of their top 5 scorers are gone from last season. I think Jimmy Butler's playmaking just really stood out for me. And
Yeah.
I think it's impressive on Jimmy Butler's end, but concerning for the Heat as a whole if Jimmy Butler's your primary playmaker. So he averaged 7.1 assists, which I mentioned, by far his career high. He's a 4 assist per game guy throughout his career. So that's much different than what we're used to seeing from Jimmy Butler. But I think that kind of highlights that. I mean, they didn't really have a primary ball handler, if we're being honest about it. I mean, Dragic was healthy most of the season, but he didn't give them what they needed last year in terms of that facilitator, that playmaker, that focal point of the offense. So I think that's the reason that they wanted to bring Kyle Lowry in to fill that void, because Bam and Jimmy Butler shouldn't have to be your primary playmakers, if we're being honest
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
As
And
much
that,
as it was impressive, you have to give your, hats off to
the
them.
pro-
They had great seasons, but
but the
I
problem is you, and this, I don't think, this is gonna sound like a knock on Jimmy Butler, but I don't view it that way. Jimmy Butler cannot be the best player on a championship team.
oof, that hurt my heart.
I mean, no, he can be the second best, but the reality is,
That hurt.
this team, the Miami Heat last season, would you agree they had championship? They had like championship expectations last season based on how they finished the
Oh,
bubble, and that they had championship
sure,
expectations.
sure.
Jimmy
Yep.
Butler, best player on the team last season. What happened? They went in and got mauled by Milwaukee in the first round. Jimmy Butler, focal point of the team, looked terrible in that series. I mean, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about who they all brought in, which I like, but I think to me that's the overall take I got from last season is that Jimmy Butler cannot be the best player on a championship team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree as much as I love his attitude and his effort and his energy, but I mean, it's an uphill battle if Jimmy Butler's your best player, especially offensively. I mean, I think they need a little more offensive punch, which obviously that was similar to the theme with the Grizzlies last episode. This team, though, the Heat has bigger names, but yeah, I think offensively they definitely needed some more punch, and Jimmy Butler was a big reason for that. Um, yeah, let's talk about some of their additions and losses. They didn't have a draft pick, and I said that last time with the Celtics incorrectly, but this time I mean it.
This time,
They
I agree. I did not have anybody down.
the Celtics barely had a draft pick, but whatever. Technically, they did. But the Heat actually didn't have any additions this offseason. Caleb Martin, Markieff Morris, PJ Tucker, Kyle Lowry. Losses, Precious Achua, Trevor Ariza, Belika, Goran Dragic, Andre Iguodala, Kendrick Nunn. So Kendrick Nunn and Dragic were 2 of their top 5 scorers last year. They'll have to make up for that a little bit, but Caveman, what do you think of these moves overall? You said you liked them.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to talk about the headliner of the offseason, which was getting Kyle Lowry. I think this was a big move for him. Now you can argue, and we were talking about this before we started. You can argue the contract, which isn't great, but I do think he's kind of what the team needed. I mean, Kyle Lowry at this point in his career I think he's a good fit alongside Jimmy Butler in that backcourt. I think he can be another leader on the team. I think he's a great teammate. He can kind of take some playmaking pressure off of Jimmy Butler. Kind of be our now Kyle Lowry cannot be the best player in the champ at this point in his career. Now Kyle Lowry 5 years ago, not saying he was the best, but you can kind of make a case maybe, but not at but the reality is the Miami Heat weren't really in a position to get a player better than Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. So I think they went out and they did the next best thing they could do was and get a guy like Kyle Lowry. And then you talk about an addition like PJ Tucker, which I'm sure even this was a great addition for them. PJ Tucker is fresh off a championship in Milwaukee. I'm still sour and bitter that he decided to leave Milwaukee. Still kind of sad about it, but he's a traitor, and what else can I say about that? But I think he fits the identity of the Miami Heat team. And Markieff Morris, I think all the moves they made, I liked all the signings. Markieff Morris is going to provide some. And we talk about when you get to our depth chart, he's going to provide some much needed depth in your front court. Overall, I like the moves. Now, is what they did enough to be serious title contenders? Probably not. But the reality is, I don't really think there was much they could have done anyways. So I think they did what they could to at least try. Which is as much as they could have done.
I'll say something slightly correct. I mean, I've always been a big supporter of the Miami Heat, but I won't say they probably aren't championship contenders. They 100% aren't. I'll go that far. I really don't like what they did. This is a team that didn't need Kyle Lowry. If we're being honest about it, they needed like Damian Lillard. I mean, if we're being, real about it. If you put Damian Lillard on this team, this is a team you're like, all right, now I like.
That is, that wasn't a realistic, outcome.
Maybe
if you're Miami, they went out and got, I'm sure you sound like you're insulting Kyle Lowry.
I am.
I'm not insulting Kyle Lowry, but going out and getting Kyle Lowry was probably the best thing they could have did.
Yes.
The position they were in.
And I know what you're saying. It's
not, to me, I'm not insulting him. You are insulting him. I'm going to defend Kyle Lowry right here. You are 100% insulting Kyle Lowry's abilities.
I'll tell you why I am, though, and not that I think Kyle Lowry is a bad player. I mean, Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, and Bam are a really nice trio. I mean, they're going to be competitive. They're going to be a playoff team. I mean, there's no doubts about that. But the thing that I don't like is that they sacrificed a lot of their depth to get Kyle Lowry. And we'll talk about their depth chart a little bit purely by the numbers I listed off: Caleb Martin, Morris, PJ Tucker, Kyle Lowry as 4 guys they acquired. Caleb Martin might not even make the team. I mean, he'll probably make the team, but he's probably not going to play a lot of minutes for him. But then you lose Achua, Ariza, Belika, Dragic, Iguodala, Kendrick Nunn, all guys that played decent minutes for him.
They do have a former All-Star another former All-Star on their team.
Who's the former Victor Oladipo? Yeah, I'm sure. Right. But they lost. When you look at their depth chart, we're talking pretty shallow here, if we're being honest, and we'll get to it. But yeah, I'll talk about the depth chart. So in the backcourt, Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson listed as their starters, with Tyler Hero, Victor Oladipo coming off the bench. Honestly, nobody that I think of note behind them. I mean, you could just list names. if you wanted to.
Gabe Vincent is,
Yeah, I was gonna say Gabe Vincent will play minutes for him, but it's if anything, this is where they're set. You have Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson. Tyler Hero, I think. Yeah, they're going to be a sixth man of the year, or Tyler Hero is going to be a sixth man of the year contender, in my opinion. They're going to need that kind of season from him. And then Victor Oladipo. I mean, they're pretty set there. Where it starts to get a little questionable is everything else. You have Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker, and Bam listed as the other three starters.
Solid 30 unit.
Very nice. Behind them, you have Markieff Morris, Dwayne Dedman, Keze Okpala, Caleb Martin. I just gets questionable for me. I think you're relying a lot on Haslam barely played last. He's basically a player coach at this point. Let's be honest about. I loved watching Udonis Haslam with Shaq and Dwayne Wade now. God, I mean that's how long the guy's been playing in the league now. But yeah, I mean,
didn't he play like 2 minutes last season? He got
something stupid like that. But first of all, PJ Tucker, he's a great role player, but I don't want him starting.
Like PJ Tucker signing?
I like PJ Tucker, but I think they're putting a lot on PJ Tucker to be. He was very. I mean, what number player was he? If you had to rank the best players on the Bucks last year, where did PJ Tucker land?
Are you talking in terms of his value to the team or overall player talent?
His value to the team.
I'd argue fourth.
Oh, see, I think that's crazy.
I think behind Giannis, Mills, and Holiday, I think in terms of their championship run, I think he's right behind them.
I mean, he only started one game for him last season, so I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Is I like PJ Tucker. He's my kind of guy. He's aggressive. He plays tough defensively.
He's your kind of guy on your kind of team.
But I don't like that he only started one game for the Bucks last season. That's what they need. PJ Tucker is a role player, not a guy that should be counted on to play 25 plus minutes a night. That's my issue with it, is that I love PJ Tucker, but I don't like the role he's going to be expected to play. So that's the thing. And we have to say Kyle Lowry is 35 years old. He's been banged up. They've had some injury problems overall with Oladipo. And I think the guys behind their starting five are really questionable. And I think that's where Tyler Hero, and it's time to talk about him a little bit, comes into play. He was their third leading scorer last year. And I don't think that he was as poor as people are saying. I think we set the bar way too high. The guy heading into last season was 20 years old. He still improved last season, averaging more points. I know his 3-point percentage went down a slight tick, but the reality is from the field as a whole, his percentages went up. He rebounded better. He was a better playmaker. The guy's 21 years old. I mean, we set the bar too high. He was better, and he showed maybe not as much as people wanted to see, but maybe we just went too crazy. People were like, this is going to be an all-star player. He still can be, but he was 20 years old. Like, people set the bar too high.
I think a lot of the problem that people had with Tyler Hero last season was just his overall inconsistency.
Yeah, that's fair.
He wasn't very consistent last season, even if his numbers didn't dip as much. You would remember Tyler Hero came on just scorching and was pretty much scorching the entire time. And then last season he came out and just was extremely inconsistent. Man, anytime that you have a rap song named after you, you have an expectation that you were supposed to reach, and he failed. So,
is that on him though, or is that on us? I think we set the bar too high.
It's all Jack Harlow's fault for putting that pressure on him by naming a song after him. But I get the concerns with the depth. But the reality is even if I like their depth, but the problem is they're not they're not championship contenders. even if I like their depth, I mean, I like PJ Tucker. I like what he's going to be for this team. But if the key, I think the big X factor here is Victor Oladipo. This is a former All-Star who just the injuries have gotten him the past couple seasons. If Victor Oladipo returns to All-Star level form, I mean, I think that helps him out tremendously. Now, Victor Oladipo has the potential to be something special for his Miami Heat team that they're lacking. The scoring, really, he has the potential to be. Reality is he has the potential to be their number one option offensively. He has that kind of ability in him. I'm not predicting that. He's been way too inconsistent with being able to be on the court. But I think he's an afterthought, basically. I think a lot of people forget Victor Oladipo's even on the team, if we're being honest. He only played a handful of games for him before he got hurt again. But I think he's a big thing. If he can come off the bench with Tyler Herro and be that backcourt off the bench of Tyler Herro and Victor Oladipo, I mean, what if Tyler Herro takes a step forward and Victor Oladipo comes back to form? What are we talking about then?
Yeah, potentially. I think here's my problem with Kyle Lowry, I think, as a whole, just to wrap this depth chart conversation up. I don't think Goran Dragic is that much worse than Kyle Lowry at this point in their careers. When you looked at Dragic's numbers last season, per 48 minutes, because he played almost 9 minutes less than Kyle Lowry per game last season, Dragic was better per 48 minutes and was more efficient. And I would rather have the depth and combination of Kendrick Nunn and Goran Dragic over Kyle Lowry at this point in their careers. So I don't like sacrificing depth for Kyle Lowry, who now if you're sacrificing depth for a player who's, like let's say it was Damian Lillard. If you had to sacrifice depth for that, cool, don't care, that's fine. But for Kyle Lowry at 35 years old, I don't like it. I like Kyle Lowry. He's been a great leader.
He has that. Kyle Lowry has that Miami Heat player mindset.
He does. Oh, he definitely does.
I'm actually a little surprised that you didn't like the Kyle Lowry signing.
I loved, what did the Miami Heat, what have they been winning on? Depth and defense. They still have the defense. The depth's not there. And let's be honest, they thrived a lot off of chemistry. They're going to have to form a new chemistry here, and I don't think that's going to be challenging.
I think Kyle Lowry's the type of guy that
he'll be fine, but it's still
Kyle Lowry into
it'll still take time. They'll be fine building that chemistry, but it's just not the same chemistry that I just the depth. It concerns me. They don't have the star. Kyle Lowry is not the star, all-star, superstar level player. They need to win a championship, and they got him at the cost of depth. And I guess that's my issue with it. It's not Kyle Lowry. It's just the fact that they had to sacrifice depth. And I like Precious Achiuwa, by the way. I really liked what he showed and the energy and potential. He's a young guy that I think they could regret giving up in the future. We'll see what he becomes. But I really like Precious Achiuwa. But I think just that's my concern. The depth isn't there, and I don't think Kyle Lowry
is going to be Kyle Lowry from 10 years.
Watch him win like MVP. That's fine. Good for. I root for the Heat. I love Eric Spoelstra. I think he's one of the most underrated coaches in the league. I love Jimmy Butler's leadership, the gritty minds. The Heat are still going to be gritty. They're going to be tough. They're going to be, we talk about the future at the end. So they're going to be a top 6 seed again in the Eastern Conference because that's how this team plays. But when you insert this team into the bigger Eastern Conference picture, did they get better enough to beat the Nets? No. Can they beat the Bucks? No. Do I think they could even beat the 76ers? I don't know. I question that. I think the Celtics are better? I think the Celtics could be better. I think the Hawks are young and improving. I just think the Heat, I don't know. I don't think that they did enough to put
I
themselves ahead in the East.
I don't think they're championship contenders, but I think, and this sounds crazy, and I just got done mentioning this, and I think a lot of it rides on Victor Oladipo. I mean, that sounds crazy to think,
It
and
does
that's a
sound crazy.
lot. But people forget how good Victor Oladipo was prior to this rash of injuries that he's gone through. I mean, he's a former all. I mean, he was a former All-Star on his way up to being one of the best players in the league. Then the injuries happened. I think they have the potential to. I wouldn't predict this. I'm not going to predict this, but they have the potential to be a top 4, 5 seed in the Eastern Conference.
Of course.
Simply because of the defensive mindset. They have the defensive ability to hang with teams like Milwaukee and maybe not Brooklyn. I don't think anybody has a defensive ability. They're gonna have the defensive ability to hang with Brooklyn this season. But I don't think they have enough in a playoff series to beat Milwaukee or Brooklyn. I do think they can be the third best team in Eastern Conference, and I do think they have potential to reach the Eastern Conference Finals.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to beat Miami. They're not going to beat Milwaukee or Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But I do think, especially when you look at the teams ahead of them potentially, you have Atlanta, but you're also expecting it. We're counting on Atlanta making a step forward. Philly. There is no, and I am very excited when we get the Philly, because there is no more puzzling case in the entire league than the 76ers.
Yeah.
Definitely Miami can be better than Philly at this point. So the championship contenders, no, but I could also see them making the Eastern Conference Finals if we're being honest.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy, especially, I mean, we saw them go on a hot stretch before, and if Oladipo, which I hate to break to you, Caveman, his last good season was 5 years ago. Like, stop living in the past. Victor Oladipo is never going to be what he was before. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. If he is, then I will eat my words forever, but I don't see that happening. But the funny thing when I was just thinking about it when you were talking is if you look at the Bucks' big three of Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday versus Butler, Lowry, and Bam, it's not that different, but it's just they don't have that Giannis level of guy. I mean, if we're being honest about it, if you compare those two trios, I don't think they're as different as we really think. It's just no one's at the Giannis level. I mean, that's kind of the reality of those two trios. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, but I think a lot of it, I personally think Tyler Hero is the X factor. If he can, they struggled offensively last year. If he can really develop into, because I mean, he has more upside than Duncan Robinson, who's listed as their starter right now. If Tyler Hero can establish himself as an offensive threat, a guy that averages 18 plus points a game alongside their top three, that could make it be a huge differentiating factor for them. So I think Tyler Hero has even more pressure on him this season to live up to what people thought he was going to be last season. So I think he's a big. I have faith in him offensively. I always like his attitude. He's got swagger. I mean, he doesn't know how to play defense. I don't like that, but he's got that swagger offensively, which I can always respect. So it'll be an interesting see. Like I said, the match of
live in the past.
You will. Victor Oladipo and his 2017 season, whatever the frick it was now, we're going to talk about that. But it's similar to, I always talked about it with Todd Gurley at the end of his Rams career. Sometimes it's hard to admit that our favorites just are never going to be what they were again. And that's okay. It's okay. It's, I'm here for you through it all. But Yeah, I think that's it for the Heat. Me more specifically, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, which is ironic because I legitimately am normally the biggest supporter of the Miami Heat, and I wish that people that are watching this saw how much I supported them the last few years, because they're gonna see this and go, "Dang, like he just hates on the Heat." But I love Spoelstra, I love the culture, I love what they've built. I want more. I want them to win a championship, but I don't think they can.
People that watch this in a vacuum are going to assume that I am the Miami Heat fan.
Yeah, basically.
and I don't like that at all.
If there's one episode that I hope I'm just complete, and like I said, I think they're gonna be the 5-6 seed in the East. They're still gonna be competitive, maybe even 4. I don't think that would be crazy. This is the one I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope they gel. I hope Bam maybe takes even another step forward and becomes the top 5 player in the league. And I want to be wrong about this. I really
and you
do.
want Victor Oladipo to turn back the clock.
I don't want that to happen. I want that to be Tyler Hero's backcourt. So, okay, that's it for the Miami Heat. That was fun, but we're rolling through the playoff team, so we have lots of content to come. Make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also going to be releasing some potential breakout player videos as well, so keep an eye out for that.
A player that Jordan really likes might be involved.
Maybe not.
We may or may not be talking about a guy that Jordan has mentioned quite a bit in this episode.
Maybe not. But if you do have a request for someone you'd like us to do, feel free to drop it in the comments below. So we're preparing for those in the next few weeks. But appreciate the feedback, the support, the subscriptions. Make sure you keep subscribing, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.